Grad School 101 with Dr. Bradbury.
Hi, welcome back to Grad School 101. Today we're going to continue our series on the parts of your graduate school application, and we are going to talk about specifically kind of the elements of your application that include your degree and your GPA and kind of what you've collected up, right, from UT as you go forward to go ahead and apply. So I think it's really important for students to remember first, right off the bat, that your degree from UT is in fact a commodity. Your degree from UT is part of what you need to be able to apply to graduate school, and you're very fortunate in that you're coming out of a very well-respected program and one that does have a very high rate of placement into graduate schools. And this is not an accident. This is because we actually have an undergraduate program that prepares people extremely well for graduate school, and many graduate schools around the country are well aware of that. So know that and take heart that in fact one of the things that you already have going for you is that your application is going to show that you went to school here at UT. Now, let's think about a little bit beyond that, beyond just actually having that transcript right there that comes from UT. What kinds of things are they going to want to see on this transcript? Are there particular courses that you're required to have? Now, this depends a little bit on what type of application specifically you're submitting, whether you're applying specifically to master's programs in marriage and family therapy or counseling, or if you're applying to a clinical master's program to beef up your research credentials before applying to a PhD program, or if you're applying to any doctoral level program. And so this is one of the things that we want you to think about. The coursework really isn't something that usually, if you've come through a psychology major at UT, you're going to be very well prepared when it comes to the type of courses that they will want to see that you've had. If you're applying into clinical PhD programs, they probably want you to have had abnormal psychology. It's one of the classes that I teach, so many of you might have had that one with me. You might be watching me right now as part of your abnormal psychology class, in fact. And even then, though, it's not necessarily the case that you wouldn't get in if you didn't have a specific piece of coursework, right, on your transcript. But these are the things that generally we want to watch out for. And sometimes it's really our transfer students that would have any kind of issue with that, or people who are coming from a different major and applying to clinical PhD programs, even though they didn't come out of a psychology undergrad program. Those folks need to watch a little bit more to make sure that they actually do have a good list of courses, that you've had enough hours in psychology, that you've had some classes there that would actually fit in with probably what they're looking for in terms of having a background in psychology courses. Now, let's talk about that GPA for a little minute. I was somebody who came through a kind of a rough and rocky kind of start to my undergraduate career. And so, like many of you, I took a couple dings to my GPA. And so we actually have a Grad School 101 episode dedicated just for you. If in fact you're sitting there and you're saying to yourself like, my GPA is not looking so good. What do I do to fix that? We really want to help you and to weigh in on that. However, probably it is the case that for most of you, the GPA isn't in the toilet. And as long as your GPA is not in the toilet, you really want to be thinking about the fact that UT doesn't have a lot of grade inflation. And in fact, most of the schools that you're going to be applying to recognize actually that the GPA coming out of UT is something that if you've got a high GPA, you've really earned that thing. And they're going to be pretty impressed with that. Now, what do I mean by high, right? Like, what's a high GPA? Good news for you here. This is not applying to medical school. Medical school is definitely still the place where I think there's a lot of nose counting when it comes to particular formulas for how it is that people get in to being able to go ahead and pursue their career path. And if you are applying to medical school, well, then you've got a lot of people, in addition to me, kind of weighing in on what you need to do to make sure that you get there. And one of the things that you'll need to make sure that you do to get there is have a pretty high GPA. Now, for PhD programs, we're really more concerned that you have a balanced kind of an application, and the GPA needs to be high enough that we're not concerned that you're not going to be able to handle graduate level coursework, right? So you have to be able to demonstrate to us that you're actually going to be able to handle the work. So anything over about a 3, 4, something like that is going to be fantastic. It's going to be like, we're like, yes. I have students come to me all the time and they're like, oh, my GPA is only a 3.6. I'm like, yes, you got a 3.6. This is fantastic. Okay. So know that the world hasn't gone completely insane, at least not in this particular area. And that if in fact you're looking at having a 3.4, a 3.5, 3.6 GPA, you're sitting pretty. This is really a great GPA. Now, if your GPA is lower than that, you want to pay attention to that. You want to start thinking about the fact that you're going to need to have really great GRE scores and some really, really top letters of recommendation in order to help to make up for the fact that your GPA is a little bit low. So, have you tended the garden of your GPA? You know, the GPA is a tricky thing because, of course, often by the time we have really good career goals in mind and we've decided, like, this is how I need to pursue my future, by the time we've reached that developmental stage, we've already come through the developmental stage where we wrecked our GPA. So know that this is actually a really common problem that people have, and I encourage you to not give up. If in fact what you're looking at is needing to rebuild a GPA, there are a lot of ways to do that. We know that it can be a frustrating process, of course, because the more hours you have, the harder it is to actually get that GPA to move, right, and to go upward. But we do think that it is definitely something that's worth doing. We also recommend to you that if your GPA is like kind of mushy, if it's not fantastic, but it's not terrible either, that you go ahead and kind of lay out on your application the different types of GPA that you have. So is your psychology GPA higher than your overall GPA? Is your upper division GPA higher than your lower division GPA? These are all things that we want to calculate and make sure that you're actually emphasizing, kind of putting your best face forward when it comes to that GPA. Now, the last bit that I want to make sure that we talk about in this episode of Grad School 101 is the other element of your application that comes out of your work here at UT very directly. And that is coursework. It could be counted as coursework if you got course credit for it, but that's your research experience. And this to me is one of the most important elements of an undergraduate experience at UT in psychology. You are, of course, coming out of one of the top research departments in psychology in the country. And that means that there are many, many opportunities for research experience here. So even if you're somebody who's thinking, you know, I don't really think I want to make research my career, I think I'm probably going to go into one of the other areas of psychology and not into research, you still want to go ahead and make sure that you get a little research experience while you're here. For one thing, what that tells people on your applications, what that says is, I took full advantage of the resources that were available to me for learning when I was in my undergraduate program. I didn't just walk right past all of those amazing research labs and not even dip my toe in. Instead, I knew that I was in a place where I could become educated about this level of psychology research, and so I went ahead and got myself educated in that area. And that's definitely something that they're going to want to see. So even if you're headed for a master's program, know that actually getting research experience is probably one of the most important things you can do while you're here at UT. Definitely more important than getting any kind of what we would call clinical experience. I know, it sounds crazy, right? Especially if you're thinking, well, but I know I'm not going to do any research. I know I'm going to be a clinician. Excellent. I like that. There's nothing wrong with that career choice, but definitely you want to be thinking about still doing some research as an undergraduate. Even on those master's applications, that research experience is going to look impressive. So make sure that if you haven't already, you go and explore what research opportunities are available to undergraduates in the Department of Psychology, as well as in other departments around the university. And there are a lot of different ways that you can get access to that information, but in particular through the Department of Psychology website, we actually have a space where you can go and you find undergraduate program, and then from there you find research opportunities, and then there's actually a search function and a list, and you can look through those and they will tell you information about what research opportunities are available to undergraduates and how to seek those out. So this has been another edition of Grad School 101, and I encourage you to keep up with the process. It's going to be okay. You can do it.